Hi, welcome to Chicago Theater Review. I'm your host, Gail. Things are going to look a little different today. Frank is not here. He's on a little venture right now, a career change, so to speak. So we wish him a lot of luck. He'll be back next month. And I have Michael Roberts and Al, who you will meet. And we're going to do things a little bit different today. We're going to talk to our guests first, and then we'll be discussing shows after that. So without wasting any time, I want to introduce our guest, PJ Paparelli. Thank you for being here, first
Thank you
of
for
all.
having me.
PJ is the artistic director of the American Theater Company, which is up by Damon and Irving Park. Mm-hmm. One of our favorite theaters. And we were talking a little bit before before the show that you've been doing this for 5 years, but you came from, where did you come from prior to this?
I came from Juneau, Alaska.
Juneau, Alaska. So I really can't say, are you enjoying the winter?
This is like summer.
Exactly.
So currently, and you got quite a resume here. And then prior to that, you were living in Pennsylvania?
No, I was in Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
So you've been involved in theater for quite some time. Mm-hmm. And prior to this, were you an artistic director at another theater?
Well, before American Theater Company, I was the artistic director of Perseverance Theater, which is the state theater in Alaska. And I was there for 4 years. And prior to that, I was the associate artistic director at the Shakespeare Theater Company in Washington, D.C. And I was there for about 6 years.
So what brought you to Chicago?
The job, to run
job.
American Theater Company, yeah. I was actually working on a new musical from the writers of Urinetown that actually we did at American Theater Company called Yeast Nation. Mm-hmm. And both Mark and Greg cut their theatrical teeth here in Chicago.
Yes.
And spoke so highly of the theater scene. And I had visited and seen some work at the Goodman and Chicago Shakes, but really didn't know it that well. So they really were the ones that got me very excited about it. So when this opportunity came up, I thought it was sort of a rarity to have an out-of-town artistic director in Chicago, so I thought it was a great opportunity, and it ended up being one.
And it's been a great match. And one of the shows that you did, by the way, that won a Jeff Award for Best Musical was the original Grease, which is so cool because the writers were from Chicago, from Taft High School, and that was the very raw version of Grease. I think a lot of people don't realize that it got really cleaned up for the movies.
Yes.
This was not the Olivia Newton-John Travolta version, and
Definitely
it was
not.
fabulous.
Thank
it was
you.
really fabulous.
Thank you. We had a great time putting it together.
But we're going to talk now about, you have a show running called Columbinus, which is now been extended through April 7th. And it is based, I'm going to let you actually talk about it, but it is based on the shootings in 1999 in Littleton, Colorado. So why don't you tell us about the show? Very powerful show.
Well, Columbinus is a documentary-style play that explores the world of modern adolescence through the lens of the shootings. So the piece is, in the current new production, has now 3 acts. The piece was written about 10 years ago, and it had 2 acts, all until this production where we added a 3rd act. But the first act focuses on the world of adolescence, and what we did is we went and interviewed teenagers in different high schools in different parts of the country, from their perspective what their world was like, and inside of that typical day, so to speak, in the lives of these kids, two outsiders sort of emerge and have a friendship that through default. And then that world then leads to a more specific world of what happened in the year up to the shootings, to the day of the shootings in the 2nd act, which kind of focuses on the relationship between Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, the 2 murderers, and then what happened that day. And then the 3rd act, which is new, focuses on the adult perspective of all the adults that were parents or community members, police, and their point of view, starting with the day of the shootings and then telescoping until today.
And you went to Littleton, Colorado to talk to people.
Yes.
How was that experience?
Very much life-changing. I think when we started it, we didn't know what we were doing at all. When we started the whole project, we just wanted to try to address this thing of school shootings that seemed to had started with Columbine, which it didn't. There were shootings before, and of course many after, but Columbine had sort of lived in a lot of our memories, and the big question of why would 2 boys do this What drove them to do that? Was it specifically that town, that school? What was it? And that's really the launching point. And so we decided, however, the Laramie Project was very popular then, and we didn't want to be the Columbine Project. We didn't want to focus certainly on our perspectives as writers. We didn't want to, we did want to know exactly what happened with the two perpetrators. And so part of the process was going out to Littleton and starting to do interviews, which was a very time-consuming and complicated process. And it took ultimately about 4 years for us to write a full working draft of the play.
Now, did you talk to any of did you talk to people directly involved in this? Did you get to talk to any family members?
Yeah.
Or,
oh, yeah.
And what, I can't even imagine how.
I mean, it's a long process of building trust. I mean, you wade into the water by some connection you have that we had, and then it takes multiple interviews for people to really open up and not just tell you, one or two things on the outside, but really to start opening up and telling you what was really going on. And then that led, I mean, when people started trusting us, I mean, the big problem in Littleton was journalists coming in and getting a soundbite and leaving, and that really was distressing to many of the people involved. And so it was very clear to us that this was going to take a lot of time. And the best recommendations were from each other. As we met somebody and they felt they trusted us, then they spoke to somebody else, and that takes time to get to many of the sources that we wanted to get to. And then those people became a part of our lives, and they're very close to us. So going back to Littleton was more of a reunion last year, and I never expected to write a third act. I wanted to go back to sort of reconnect with folks and see how they were, and then everything changed. So
I think it's interesting that a lot of these small towns, they're known for these things, which they probably don't want to be known for, but it becomes Littleton, Colorado, or Aurora, Colorado. And I know that we talked about not taking a stand on this, but it is amazing when you fast forward from 1999 that this is still going strong, that people are still this is still happening all over.
Oh, absolutely.
And when will it end? And it's just so powerful. It's so nice when people can use their craft, their art, to tell these stories, like the Laramie Project or things like this, because we always say that theater is very entertaining, but can also be very educational. And these are stories that need to be told.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think what I think this piece achieves, for all of its strengths and weaknesses, I think what it achieves is the most unbiased truth that we could try to assemble by representing as many community voices as we could. And I think the survivors that have come out to see it, in fact, we have a survivor coming on Thursday, one of the family members of the only African-American killed who was in the school and killed that day. His family's coming to see the play this week. And one thing that the survivors have been saying to us is that, with the media, you usually have one point of view in an article, but what the theater allows for is all those voices to kind of be heard. And we worked really hard to try to not weigh it one way or the other. So I think it gives you a more complete understanding of what people were feeling and experiencing there.
And I think one of the situations is that everybody's far removed when you live in a big city like Chicago or New York. It doesn't mean anything except what you read in the paper or what you saw on TV. And I think when you visualize something sitting in a theater and watching and feeling like you're with the people who experienced it, I think it means more. It has a little more depth to it, and gets into your soul and heart a little bit, that you can think about it. Maybe you can do something to stop another kid from doing it anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Really, that's true. I mean, if it can stop one person, I don't think it's going to completely stop it. If it can stop one person, we're much better off. So, these are the stories that people like to tell. Michael, you?
As a playwright, when you were writing this and you had to go into the murderers, like you call them, how do you make something like that accessible to an audience? Because you have to make them, relatable, even though they did this horrific act. So what were some of the challenges when you were writing that?
Well, the first challenge is to get your own opinion out of the way. I think, we immediately had our thoughts on why we think they did it, and we had to get that out of the way. And the best way to do that was sort of start meeting people they knew and friends of their family and their teachers and their principal. And that took a long time. And our opinion, or the play's opinions, kept evolving as we got closer and closer to understanding why they did it. And so that was one thing, but I think the other thing is we wanted also the play to breathe in a way that the first act wanted to be not specific. We didn't want to say only these things happen in places like Littleton. They happen everywhere, obviously. And we wanted to show part of the environment that the two boys were inside of. Not that that's the reason why they did what they did, but that was part of the reason. You know, they specifically targeted the school for a reason. It wasn't random. You know, in the case of Newtown, I mean, Adam Lanza shot his mother. That was a very specific choice he made. In this particular situation, the two boys were very loving to their parents, and they loved their parents, and they said very specific goodbyes to their parents, but the school is where they were targeting. So for us, we wanted to examine the culture of that school while they were there. Well, Columbine's changed quite a bit since, but while they were there, that was important to us. So that's a part of it. And then to include all the aspects of things that kept popping up. I mean, Eric had, you know, he had a lot of emotional issues and mental health issues, and so that was a factor. Their fascination with Nazi culture was a factor. All of those things, not any one of them, but now in Littleton, not years ago, but now people will consistently say it was a perfect storm. A perfect storm of these 5 or 6 things all leading to that one day. Which is great that over time that has evolved, because that was not the case when we were first there. People were blaming one thing or the other. And so it's refreshing that time has brought a greater understanding to it. And that's what we wanted, to, you know, to present how complex this is.
And that was actually prior to the whole social media explosion
Before all of
too.
that. Before all of that.
And I think many times we see people come back, like even on TV shows, and do these town halls of something that happened years ago, and everybody's, you know, when things settle down, people's views are a little bit
Yes.
different. I also think that some of the best shows that I've ever seen are the shows that make me feel uneasy, like this show. You know, I don't always just want to sit there and, like, you know, watch a Book of Mormon and laugh, and although that makes you feel uneasy too, but
Well, yeah.
when you feel a little
That's a
bit
different
uneasy,
thing.
you know, it kind of hits home. And
Well, it makes you think a little bit too, and then
Right,
and
and you
to
need to
think,
think.
that anything can happen anywhere.
Yes.
I mean, you know, right now at Steppenwolf, they're doing that show about, you know, in Chicago about gangs and all the other things, and that it's there, and the family, you know, that people choose what they choose because that's the choice they have. They're left with nothing else. And in a kid situation where one kid is a power over another kid, that kid is a follower, and that becomes his family, and then they start listening to each other. And again, it's, if you can save one kid
Right.
from doing something, or even going back to staying in school, keeping their education. If you save a kid from dropping out of school, then you've done one good thing in life, and maybe his life will change other people's lives, and that's what you look for, is that kind of mushrooming. And
we hope people get the message.
right, and that's the whole thing, is people do need to get the message. Are you doing discussion groups afterwards?
We have occasionally done it. It's hard because I think people after a play like this want an answer, want to know what my opinion is, want to know what the actors' opinions are, and we've been really careful not to do that, just because we've really wanted the play to breathe and let the audience sort of sort it out for themselves. But we have done some talkbacks to talk about the process, because people are very curious about how we got everybody to speak and share so much. So, but what we have been doing, the play's tied into the theater's education outreach program called American Mosaic, and so over 1,000 CPS students have actually read and studied the play in their 9th grade English classes, where their English class, English teacher works on the literary aspects. We have a teaching artist comes in to stage a scene from the play, their own versions of it, in all the classrooms, and then all the kids come to ATC and perform their version of the whole play on the set, and then they see a student matinee. So it's great because after that we do have a discussion, and they have been working on the play for essentially 2 months, and so there's a very different kind of discussion when they've been playing parts and reading the play, and they have very strong opinions on what they would do better, and you know, it's very funny. But what's been great about that has been opening the door to a lot of discussions between adults and kids, and that's the